Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, how you doing? Oh, that was a question. It really had a question mark at the end. I'll try again. Hi, how you doing? Oh, thank you. Oh, it's lovely to see so many people actually turn out for PROs. I mean, performing right organisations. It's a bit of a mouthful, a bit of a thought process, but it's really, really good to see you here. My name is Paulette Long. I'm based in London, England. I shall give a quick intro on me and then let the rest of the team introduce themselves, and then we're going to go in talking about PROs, a touch on copyright, a little bit about publishing, a little bit about A&R within PROs. But I really want to keep the floor open for any questions that you may have and try to incorporate those en route, because more than anything I want to make sure that you get something from this that you can take away with you. So I've been working in the music industry for about 34 years. For the most part, I've worked in music publishing for an independent publishing company. I've sat on the board for the PRO in the UK, which is PRS for Music. PRS for Music, yeah. I sat 2 terms, about 8 years. I also do some work with the foundation, and I'm an ambassador there, and I do work. I'm a trustee for their benevolent fund. I currently sit on the board of the Music Publishers Association. Love music, love publishing, love copyright, love ownership, love masters. And I shall, love income, yeah. And I shall, forward on to my co-colleagues. If you can introduce yourselves briefly, that would be wonderful.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mitch Martin. I'm Senior Director of Creative for BMI. I'm based out of Atlanta. I come from an A&R background. I've worked with artists the likes of Outkast, Janelle Monáe, who I worked with for almost 10 years. I was her A&R and headed up all her projects and albums she put out. And done some management and worked with a lot of independent artists. And working with new up-and-coming artists is really, I would say, my passion. My position at BMI is one of, like Paulette mentioned, there's the A&R component, but there's also an event promotion component. I work with writers, producers, their managers, their labels, their publishers. And so we really act as a nexus. My position acts as like a nexus of the creative industry and a conduit between BMI and the creative community. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. I am Melissa Cameron-Pastley. I work at SOCAN. How many of you guys are SOCAN members? All right, great. We've got lots of Canadians in the room, I see, yes? Great. If you're not, come up to me after this and we will get you signed up. I work on the A&R team in our Toronto office. We've got offices in Montreal, Vancouver. We just opened one in LA, and the head office is in Toronto. I've been with SOCAN for about 2.5 years now. Before that, I was working in live, so I was working at a booking agency. And before that, I was in management. Before that, I actually studied music and was teaching piano and voice. That is me in a nutshell.
Hi, my name's Tim Hardy. I worked with SOCAN for about 22 years in Toronto and Halifax. I now own music consulting company called Aspenway Music. That I do rights management, bookings, and management for artists. And I also co-own a music publishing company based in Nova Scotia called Sound of Pop, and we represent about 5,000 or so copyrights through our publishing company and through sub-publishing.
Jason Reddick, Associate Director of Creative Services for ASCAP in Atlanta. We have about three offices on the urban side, Atlanta, New York, LA. And I pretty much just work with all of the artists and publishers and writers and producers we're the conduit between the industry and the people outside of the industry to help them navigate it and get things moving on the business side for them as well as the creative side. That's it.
Thank you. I'll start by asking a question, and I can answer this in case you're feeling cheated somewhat. What is copyright? I think it's really important that everybody in the room gets an understanding of what that is, because it's the real base and root of everything. So if anybody wants to answer that, they can. If not, I'll cheat and just read the Google answer.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's start with the Google answer and then we can expand.
Google has to say
because everybody has different views of it, but what is the layman's terms to it?
Okay, let me go with Google gave me this information. I thought it was great and quite succinct. So, it's a legal right existing that grants the creator of an original work exclusive rights to determine whether and under what condition the original work may be used by others. So, as a creator, you create a work. In the UK, where I know I'll speak about that, that work is automatically protected by copyright law, and that copyright law basically says that if anybody is going to exploit that work, that thing that you've created, then you should receive some form of income for it, some sort of compensation for it. I think that's it in a nutshell. Are we all okay with that?
Yeah.
Great. So I'll go with the first question. What is a performance right organisation? And we have 3 societies here. Do they differ, and how do they differ?
I'll start. I guess, to be honest, we don't differ as far as when you look at what we do as a whole. If you look at the basis and the nuts and bolts of what a PRO is, it's really just performing rights organization. We collect on your performing rights as well as handle disputes on your behalf. Now, each organization gets more detail based on the personnel that they have. So like Mitch said, we have to go in and we do events, or we have to go in and do education, and we have to teach artists a lot of things that they might not know, basic things as far as like what a copyright is or what splits are. Most people don't know that. It's very important to know what your splits are, because as a writer, you own 50% of the song and the producer owns the other 50%. But if you have a co-writer, you got to split those down and go even further. So we do a lot of education to protect people. And also we help artists, like when you go back to copyright, if you look, there was just a landmark decision that was just made in Atlanta for a writer on a song for Usher who sold 10 million albums. That writer's about to get paid $44 million just because his copyrights were infringed on. He had proof, and the court of law just awarded him $44 million. So those things are important to know, your splits and copyrights and protection for your works.
Ouch. How much was that? 44 million.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I hear they're appealing, right? They're
definitely going to appeal. I mean, they have no choice but to appeal that. But at the end of the day, I mean, you can see how big that is. And he's probably not going to get 44 million, but he's going to get something where he's good for life, and he's going to be credited and all those things.
Why do you think he waited this long?
Well, it's not about a weight thing. It's about time frame, and like, he couldn't have the money. You're fighting against, really, because at that point Usher is a major recording artist, so he's fighting against the label. He's not fighting against Usher. So he's fighting against somebody that has millions and millions of dollars to drown him out, in a sense. But, fortunately, he has organizations that help him to fight that, and he has proof. Because, again, once you record something, it's automatically copywritten on Pro Tools and things like that. He had the proof. He was able to see it. We actually probably will have another landmark case coming up soon for a major song. I don't know. I didn't even see that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
But I do know that
Usher is
it
ASCAP.
was the whole issue started with a co-writer of his that didn't credit him, and so the higher ups didn't know. It was his co-writer who started the song with him originally, who, as the song moved through the system, kind of pushed him out of the way.
Yeah.
And he was able to go back and prove, like, no, I started.
I created this.
You know what? I think we should do a panel on disputes. I think that's just going to be so.
Oh, wow,
that's the one. That's the one, isn't
That's
it?
a panel by
Disputes
itself.
and sample
Yeah,
clearances.
that's a
That
thing
needs
by
to be on the
itself.
list. Melissa?
Let's take it back a little bit about like actual like performing rights. And some people get confused just by the title. Some people, or you just know that if you are writing the song, or if you're a publisher on the song, then that's when you're going to be getting paid from the performing rights organizations, right? So it's a bit confusing. Doesn't mean that you necessarily like played guitar on the song or performed on the song. It's the writing of the song, right, and the publishing of the song. So just to clear that up for some people. So in Canada, SOCAN is Canada's performing rights organization. So we license general licensing. We do, in shoe stores, gyms, anywhere that's performing music publicly. Performing meaning maybe it's on the radio, or maybe it's in their shop. You're working out to it, that type of thing. We do live concerts, which has a different kind of a tariff. We do film, television, radio, all those things, you name it. So if there is a public performance of it, there's a license fee attached to it, and then that is how the songwriters and publishers are getting paid.
And just to break that down, so the term licensing, it's basically that the shop, the venue, the hotel, the business, they want to use premises, they want to use music on their premises. In order to use the music, they have to pay for a license. They have to go to the relevant copyright society in their territory to get a license that enables them to play, whether it's the radio, the TV, live performances in that venue. And they usually, for the most part, submit some information as to what's been played, and then that's paid out to the writers. So basically, the collection society is there so that a group can come together and go and fight all the businesses on your behalf to get a really good rate for the license, fight the TV companies, fight the venues. Not so much of a fight, but go as a group. And as a group of writers and a group of publishers, we have a much stronger voice to get a really good license on behalf of the writers and the songs that we represent. So just to break down the term licensing a bit for you, just so you understand what that means. But it is what the performing rights organisations do on your behalf. They go, they license, because people are using their money, your music, they get the money in and they pay that in some form, hopefully, across to you.
Yeah, and to add to that, we all work together. We all have reciprocal agreements. So if you're a SOCAN member, and we're licensing in Canada and making sure we're getting that money in and paying out the ASCAP members, BMI members for performances that are happening in Canada. If you're a SOCAN member, you can choose your affiliate, your U.S. affiliate. So you have a choice between ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC when you sign up. And again, if you're with ASCAP, for instance, and your performance happens in the States, then they're working to collect your money and they're sending that to us to pay you out.
Lovely. Tim, can you give it from your perspective with regards to your publishing identity and what your expectations are of a performing rights organisation?
I think there's two. One of them, the big one, is actually getting paid.
Yeah.
So ensuring that we get paid and our writers get paid. The second one is sort of helping on the A&R side, helping to develop our writers. So working with SOCAN, for example, doing like song camps, making introductions to other writers. Maybe there's an artist in Halifax, then we wanted him to write with somebody in Nashville, for example. We'll work and connect and help, and SOCAN can help us do that. So those are the sort of the two big things for us.
And when we look, we know that as individual writers can be direct members and should be direct members of a performing rights organisation. What would you say the benefit would be of going through a publishing company?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, for us, we do two things. So we ensure again that all the royalties are properly collected. So we'll work with the performing rights societies. We'll if there's extra work that needs to be done, we'll make sure that that's done. When it comes to live performances, we'll ensure that the live performance sheets are reported for Canada. When it comes to cue sheets, we'll make sure that the cue sheets are properly done for film and television. So it's sort of that administrative work that the artist doesn't have to do.
Yeah.
So we can allow them to actually be the creative and let us do the administrative part. So that's.
You mentioned something that was quite interesting. You said that you help with disputes. In the UK, there's only one performing rights organisation, which is PRS, and it treats all its members equally. So if there is a dispute, then it's down to the members to deal with the dispute. PRS will not take side. So it'll be quite interesting to hear how that works.
I don't think, for us, I know we don't take sides. It's just more so research and figuring out the claim and figuring out who is supposed to get paid. Is there some type of proper documentation that was done at the time? Because when you're doing songs, especially in the U.S., as you do a song, you should get a split sheet. Because at the end of the day, when money is involved, friends aren't involved anymore. Like, friends make the songs, but business handles the business. And it's not friends, it's people. And so you always want to make sure you have a split sheet involved. Because, again, if that song comes out and it does really well, it might take you 5 or 6 years just to get some type of money off of that, and that could have been your original idea or your original composition. And so you always want to make sure you're protected through your split sheets and then management if there's involvement, or lawyers, things like that. So,
and I will say, in addition to that, all of the parties involved in the dispute look at the PROs to be that neutral party, because we're the one entity that doesn't have stake in the song.
Right.
We collect and we pay out, but we're not a stakeholder in the song. So in the course of figuring out a dispute, I may be talking directly to one of the writers. Say there are 4 or 5 people on the song, then I may be talking to a publisher. I may be talking to a manager. I'm gathering data. I'm gathering information from all of these parties and trying to get. Basically, I'm trying to get down to an official document that says who owns what on the song, and that way I can submit it to my admin department. Like, this is the official split sheet or the official legal agreement that says who owns what. No matter, I know it may be wrong. It may say this now. It may have paid out this in the past, but this is what it's supposed to be. So everybody looks to us because we don't have a stake in it to help figure it out.
It's almost like acting
Yeah.
like a mediator,
Yeah.
like just until it gets resolved on their side,
Right.
like putting things on hold,
Yep.
payments and stuff.
And whilst we're here, is there any? I'll come to you in a second. Is there any guideline that you can give with regards to splits and split sheets? There's something that I mention to when I do any talks. There's a term that I use, just a guideline that I give up and coming songwriters when they are in that room and they are trying to work things out. But it'd be interesting to know what guidelines you give somebody who's really green, really fresh, just understanding what co-writes and splits are. What advice would you give them when trying to work out how to split a song?
It's tough because I think it's almost like a gut feeling and understanding the situation. Because I know for a fact if you're just starting out as a writer and I put you in a room with a starrer who writes a lot of Rihanna stuff, you're probably not going to get an equal split just because that song is going to get placed because of her name, whereas you're just now coming into the business. So sometimes you have to sit down and have a real assessment of where you are versus where the co-write person is versus where the placement is, because a lot of times you might not have that opportunity just starting out, but it opens the door for you to develop and go on and make some type of money. Because I always look at it as it's better to have 10% of something than 100% of nothing. So you have to figure out how that fits for you and works for you in your business when you're starting.
How does that work for you, Tim?
For us, it's the conversation. So you want to make sure you actually have that conversation. So regardless of whether it's a 25% split or a 50% split, we always make sure that, and we do that for our writers. We set up co-writes and we do that kind of thing. And we make sure at the beginning, and when usually I'm there, I'll have that discussion with the writers to say, it may not be a split sheet at the time, but it'll be, I just want to let you guys know this is going to be a 50-50 split for all the songs or whatever it happens to be. Everybody's good with that. Okay, great. And then as a publisher, we'll get the registration done and we'll do that. So, but it's that conversation, because what ends up happening when the disputes happen is when the conversation doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And the expectation is, I'm going to have 25%, but
Right.
you gave me 10%, right?
And the disputes happen when the money comes. That's for sure. When
Yeah.
there's,
Always
when
when
there's
the money
lots of money
comes.
involved, that's when yeah.
Or really when there's not that much money. It does make
Yeah.
a difference. Like
Well, for
small
sure. Yeah,
small
yeah,
amounts, right?
Yeah.
It does
Yeah.
make a difference. Why are you getting, especially when you're starting out, why are you getting, $1,000 and we're not getting $1,000
Sure.
when the band's not making any money, right?
And I've seen like numerous times people, and sometimes it's just like the wrong, like broken telephone kind of, like one team's side thinks that so and so is supposed to get this percentage, and then it gets all these registrations come in and they're different, and then it's like it just takes that one person to be like, oh, here's the signed off split sheets. Oh, okay, great. Now we all remember what we decided on, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's always best to do it as early in the process as possible. But as far as the method to figure it out, I've seen different people do it different ways. Like there's what I've recently learned. There's Nashville style splits where
Everybody.
If you're in
I'm
the
going to
room-
write that down. That's
if
a
you're
hashtag.
in the room, yeah.
if you're in the room and
get a split.
you may be playing the person playing keys and playing guitar is getting just as much as the person writing the lyrics and writing the so they just take that 100 and divide it by however many people are involved in the creation. They're not being nitpicky about, well, you did this and I did this. So that's a new one for me. And I've been involved personally from my A&R days and coming up with splits where it's like pulling teeth, and they're like, well, I did this part of the hook and you did that. So how many words? Oh, I came up with that word. I've literally had those meetings where, no, that word I came up with. I said babe instead of baby or whatever it is. And I've seen split sheets where it's like 42.35.
Oh, gosh, that's the worst.
Yeah, horrible.
And it's just, and that to me at that point is getting nitpicky and kind of, I would say it's greedy. It's just like, give that person that too.
But sometimes that like 0.83 matters on like a massive hip hop song.
Oh,
like,
it definitely does.
that can mean
Yeah.
a lot of money.
but
But just
think we
round
look
it.
at
I mean,
it-
just
yeah.
let's just round it.
Because I think we look at it
we have to go
as-
into decimals.
I think we look at it as if the song comes out and you guys figured it out, that gives you opportunities to have more work together. And if we're sitting here nitpicking now on one song,
gonna be-
how are we going to do a
yeah.
whole album together? Because
Right.
especially in hip hop, it's based on full collaborations now. So you see people having full projects together. And so, but that happens because they go ahead and figure it out. Okay, man, I'll give you this one this time because you'll give it to me the next time. And so it's a lot of give and take on that side.
Well, I'll give you a controversial rule of thumb that I always use, and then I'll let people to scurry away and fight amongst themselves after that. I usually, when we're looking at a traditional song with music and lyrics, I usually say that 50% goes towards the composer who's written the music, and it's a general rule of thumb, and the other 50% goes to the lyricist and the top line melody writer. And I give that as a guideline and send them away. So at least there's some sort of structure to work with. So if I've just done the music, I'm beat maker, I'm the producer, I've come up with all the music, then I should get all of that. And if you've come in as the lyricist and songwriter with the top line melody, then you get the other 50%. And then it's a breakdown of all those parts based on that separation. And I find that tends to just give a standard guideline to work from before the fighting or the infighting starts.
And at least they're having the conversation, right? That's the
that's
point.
definitely what it is.
Yeah, so if I'm say I'm Rihanna.
Hi, Rihanna.
Hi, Rihanna.
But if I'm Rihanna, and we have someone who's writing my music, and we have another person who's producing it, I'm not getting anything.
No. If you're Rihanna, you're definitely getting some of that. regardless.
You shouldn't get anything because you're not. Let's just make it clear. Rihanna, if you as Rihanna, you're not writing the song, you're not in the room, you shouldn't get a writer's share because you're not a part of create. I'm just the basics.
I was about to say that's
just the
that's
basics.
dispute, but at the same time, you're Rihanna. So
no,
if this song comes out,
this is where the confusion goes.
Nah, because if this song comes out, it's going to do at least 100 million
understand what you're
streams.
telling people from a business perspective and from a copyright perspective. From a creator's.
Right,
Let me go back and read this again.
The
From a legal point of view,
Technically, she's right.
From a legal point of
Technically,
view,
she's right,
Rihanna
but
isn't in the
if
room.
you wanna get
She
paid-
doesn't get anything.
And I can speak on Rihanna because Rihanna's BMI, and I've seen splits on work. Rihanna's probably the most fair. She's much more fair than her
she's very
contemporaries
fair.
because if she's
But she's
not
still getting
right-
a percent though.
Yeah, but this is
there's a
She's still getting a percent. though.
I've seen the split sheet.
I
for
have
work.
too.
She
Because remember, a lot of her
but the
writers
split
come from
is like
ASCAP too.
is
and I've seen the
is
split.
close to zero.
Moderator.
I'm just saying,
I think it's really nice
so
that
let me
Rihanna's
separate
here.
this.
That's
So
a
we're
really
talking
good
about music and we're talking about business.
Yeah.
The music business.
Right.
Two completely separate words.
Right.
When I speak to you about the music, I'm talking to you about the people that are in the room creating that work. And those are the people that belong on that work and have a right and a share in the copyright.
Yeah.
When I talk about the business, then I'm going to have to let go some of my share to give to Rihanna as a business decision because it's beneficial to my career. But you need to understand that it's two separate. It's not one sentence. Rihanna's not in the room, but she has a share. That's not the sentence. You need to be able to separate the two areas and make a commercial decision, understanding that I have built this house. I put the bricks together, I've done the foundation, I've got 100% of this house, but as a business decision, I'm going to give 50% of this house to somebody who I think can let it out for me and enable me to generate money. But you need to understand it's two separate things. Do not grey the lines. That way you make a clear decision, and in the future as you move forward, you don't get hurt based on the fact that I did this because I thought that was what I was supposed to do because this person's a bigger person than me. It's not so. Make a commercial decision, separate the two places, and I think you'll be fine. True. All right, I'm coming off my hobby horse. Sorry, there are a few more questions.
Yeah, so in the Netherlands, the publisher gets only 1/3% of the writer share, for instance. And I know in the US it's 50. Is it different in Canada, where the publisher gets?
50, and 50 would be the max.
Yeah, you're not allowed to go.
Is that by law? Because in the Netherlands it's 30.
Yeah.
I think we share the same ideas about the laws as far as it's 100% of a song and it's broken down 50 to the composer writer, 50 or producer and 50 to the actual writer.
I think what we're saying here is when you're a member of a performing rights organisation, the performing rights organisation wants to look out for the writer. They want to make sure the writer always gets something. So I think there were times in the past where a writer could write the song, but if they signed a publishing deal, the publisher could get the full amount of that money through. And what the organisations wanted to do was to ensure that the writer would always receive something. So, for example, in the UK, the writer always received 50% of whatever's generated by the performing rights organisation direct, and the publisher would receive the other 50%. But then based on what the agreement is that the writer has with the publisher may need to top the writer's share up, because if it's not a 50-50 agreement, if it's a 75-25, the publisher would have to give the writer some more money in accordance to the agreement that they have. So basically, as a writer, you're protected by your performing rights organisation to make sure that you definitely get some money somewhere through.
Right.
There are deals when I know that people sign away those rights.
It's sad. It's the worst thing.
Yeah.
Well, I know it gets difficult, but don't sign away your rights. Just stick it out, because I've seen so many people that could have been multimillionaires if they just waited 1 week, literally 1 week before the song came out. If they would just waited. Oh yeah.
There's a question right here.
But the maximum would be
sign away
50%.
Yeah. There's a question right here.
People sign away with stuff.
Yeah. So has anybody got a thought on that?
I guess it comes down to like essentially it's registering medleys is what it is. So you're right, in the trad scene, it would be you could have it on an album and it was traditional. Somebody decided to put traditional, but it wasn't traditional. They just decided it was, and then the next person that went to find out who the owner was looked at that album, it said traditional, so all of a sudden now it's traditional. So 20 years later, it's a traditional song as opposed to your husband's song, right? So it happens often. I think in that realm of music for sure. And there is a lot of handshake deals, and especially when it comes to trad music and registering trad music, a lot of times because it is a little more difficult when you're registering medleys, it's not done the same way as it is say a regular song. A lot of times trad artists don't register the works, and becomes an issue because the majority of trad artists make most of their money right from live performances, and that would be where on the SOCAN side, for example, or the PRS side, that's where they would. So you want to make sure that it is registered correctly. So you'd have to.
Remind the difference between publishing perhaps and playing. Now that I'm hearing you speaking, because just because someone's put that in their book, but they've acknowledged the person who's written it.
All right.
You know, is there a separation between now the publishing side and then when it gets played elsewhere?
I think go back to the society. The registration at the society is the place where the money's paid out. So that's the most important log to look at, outside of wherever anybody else has written it and whatever it says anywhere. So always go back to the society, because that's the money trail.
Because for your husband, for example, you want to make sure that the information that is out there is the fact that he owns that song. So then, when the registration is done, say it's me and I'm registering a medley that has 3 tunes in it. Two of them are traditional tunes, so I would register it as my arrangement of the traditional tune, and the other one would be your husband's, for example, right? So when you're registering the tune, it would break that down within the registration. So the tune is called, Nova Scotia Music Week tune. It's on my record as that. On the back end, when it comes to SOCAN, it would be I would have my arrangement credit, for example, for the 2 trad songs, and then your husband would have his credit on the back end as the composer for that. And then when the royalties come through, that's when you make sure. So. Right. So the arrangement would only be you'd only get credit. You would get credit for the arrangement on the album as an arranger if it's not public domain. You don't get royalties. You wouldn't receive royalties
get a
for
writer's
it.
share on it.
But you would receive royalties for your arrangement of a public domain song. So 70 years, 50 years after the death.
Lovely. I have another question just here.
If the PROs are kind of neutral, where's the PRO getting their money from? Is it usually a government-funded organization, or how does the PRO pay their people?
I guess it just depends on what PR. Like the states, it's an admin fee in a sense. So we get like 3% of what we collect on. So it's just an admin fee. Like we consider ourselves a nonprofit. Yeah, it's a small percentage, and we consider ourselves like a nonprofit. So we don't. In the states, we don't get government funding. You guys got it. I'm telling you guys got it made here because we don't get none of that.
I'm moving.
It comes from the licensing.
Yeah,
So a radio station, a television station, a bar, a restaurant, they actually pay a license to SOCAN or PRS or at
Yeah.
BMI or ASCAP. So that revenue comes in.
And there's an
Then-
operating fee.
Yeah, so
taken-
the
yeah.
organization takes a percentage,
Yeah.
but all of the revenue comes from businesses that are using music, and that's what.
So just to note, we're only taking an operating fee off of our Canadian, like for SOCAN, we're taking an operating fee off of what's coming in from Canada. But if your music's being played elsewhere, we're getting that money and giving it directly to you. We don't take a fee off of any international money coming in. Just it's a good note.
That's
Yeah,
an exception.
yeah, totally.
We have another question just there, I think. Yeah. If you can
another
speak
one-
up for me.
Yeah, kind of about splits. So this is some real squabbly BS for you. So I've got a group where typically the way the songwriting is somewhat collaborative, and typically we've come up with a pretty systematic way of determining the splits. Mostly based on who came up with the bulk of the musical idea, and then who contributed each instrumental part and the arrangement decisions, etc. And it winds up rolling out that everyone winds up usually having some share, although some are generally quite bigger than others. So I've got this particular piece with that group where I have every intention of reusing that piece of work in another larger body of work, as well as with this group, and kind of the current agreement is just that the group as an entity will retain basically copyright of the master recording.
We may have to take this one offline, actually. Do you mind?
This sounds real detailed.
Yeah. Do you mind? No, I mean,
Sounds like a remix.
it actually sounds really
Yeah.
quite interesting. And it brings me on to another thought process, but let's take that one offline if we can, which is just the way that different cultures treat music and copyright slightly differently. So if I think about reggae music, I worked quite a lot within reggae music, and in reggae, the rhythm, which is what the composers do, creating the music, is oftentimes separated and has a life of its own from the lyric and the top line melody. So what would be classified, I'll use another term, as instrumental, will have a life of its own, and that instrumental will be used by hundreds of other artists who would then sit their own lyrics on top of that. But that is such part of the tradition that people, with respect, still give the writer's share to the original producers usually who created the music, and then claim a share, the other 50%, for themselves as the top line writer. Now, where the confusion happens for us is where you have a rhythm or instrumental that's running around, and then somebody comes and puts a cover version on top of it. I Will Always Love You, sitting on a reggae rhythm, but you have a cover song. And it's those kind of nuances that you might find yourself in, because automatically the rhythm is null and void, because it's now just a cover version of I Will Always Love You by Dolly Parton, thank you. Dolly Parton, yeah. And it would be really interesting if there are any nuances in your territory or within a specific genre where things are done quite differently. So maybe a genre where there was a load of samples and you sort of work the samples different, or a genre where there are lots of writers and you work that quite differently, or a territory where the music is all traditional and regurgitated and we have to kind of adjust our copyright rules to fit within the culture.
I know for us, I know it's hard in the States, because we don't really separate rhythm like that, but I mean, more recently we started thinking about it because there was another case that happened with Pharrell and Robin Thicke and
Marvin Gaye.
Yeah, because it was a rhythm thing where they actually won because it was the spirit of the rhythm that motivated the song, and so they actually won money, and that was the first time that had ever happened before. So I think we're starting to see more change in the States when it comes to those things, and breaking down the song even further. And so I don't know if we have seen it yet, but I know it's coming.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and
it's really good to see that the PROs are are recognizing that they have to work with the music. You have laws and rules and regulations, but
Right.
you know that it has to be flexible in some way.
And I think, well, just by nature, hip hop can be a heavy sample based genre, and so I've seen split sheets that just look insane because the original work had multiple writers,
Yep.
and because hip hop is such a collaborative art form, the new work has multiple writers, and so you have all of the original writers,
Yeah.
you have all of the new writers, and it can get very mind blowing the amount of people that have splits on a song,
Yeah.
especially so it can be in a dozen or more people that have a split.
Yeah.
So also the original people can get so much of the record.
Yeah.
Well, it depends because
It depends if they ask for it.
Because that goes back to sign away your rights. Because I know in hip hop, a lot of the samples come from era that people wouldn't register or they didn't even own the masters and the label did, and so you don't know until you get in there and do some work and see who owns what and what the percentages are.
Right.
Sometimes you're still big, I guess.
That's where I say business. It's that would be a business decision. So I'd say potentially the relationship, he wanted to keep that fine. He'd made a promise, and so it was in his remit to give away a share of the house.
Yeah.
Use his instrument with somebody else's with the lyrics.
Yeah, I think it was lyrics that.
Yeah.
I mean, again,
There's no cut and dry, really.
No, there
That's
is
the
no
answer.
cut and dry,
It's-
which
it all
I think is what
depends
we're
on the
telling.
person.
Discussion,
I mean, we know artists. They say it all the time where they work with somebody so closely that their album is coming out. They might charge $1 just to get the feature, and then the next time on your album, I'll give you a feature. So it just all depends on the people and their business and how big they are. Like Drake giving Kanye a percentage. I mean, that doesn't hurt his bottom line in
not
a
at
sense
all.
because it's Drake.
Yeah, it's a
You know what I'm saying?
relationship thing.
Yeah.
It's a relationship thing. He'd rather keep that relationship as is
Definitely.
because he knows down the road Kanye might get hot again production wise. So he wants Kanye to give him some production beats or work with some of his artists that are smaller than him. And so it's just a business decision at that point.
So I think we're almost out of time, but I'll check to see if there are any questions from the floor. But one thing that I did want to look at quickly was for those performing rights organisations that do A&R their songwriters, with millions of songwriters within each organisation, how do you decide who you work with?
For me personally, it's a mixture of who bugs me the most and what I like. It's a mixture. It is a mixture. I had a conversation. We had an event at our office earlier this week actually, and someone who I just finished helping resolve an issue or connect to someone is like, yeah, I know I call you. I'm so sorry. I was like, no. You're going to get more attention because you're calling me. You're at the top of my head. And then there are people who I just see something special in. So there's that subjective space where I am trusted to have a certain level of taste in my ear and like, okay, because of my work history to say, what's quality. But yeah, primarily for me, it's the artists and their teams who are most communicative and accessible and who I like personally.
Right.
Yeah, very similar. Like same with our team. If you're top of mind, you're like always reaching out, letting us know what you're up to. There are right ways to do it as well as annoying ways to do it. But if you are, just make yourself known. Like tell us what you're looking for, how we can help, and we'll help you. Like whatever stage you're at, you can have written 2 songs and you want to start meeting people to write with. Like you want to be introduced to people. You want to come use. We have a writing room in almost all of our offices now. We had this one guy, a good example, a producer that was just using the room all the time. Really nice guy. Was never afraid to introduce him to people because I knew that everybody would like him, kind of thing. And then we ended up having him at 2 of our song camps, one in Nicaragua and one in BC. And then actually right after the BC camp, he got signed to Sony ATV, and we have a really good relationship. So the key is to be persistent and be a really nice person, like what you were saying before.
What about you,
Make
Tim?
people want to work with you.
With
we're
regards to your
the same. We're
catalog?
the same on the pub side. I mean, we do our own A&R, so we're always out looking for things. But there are artists that, I mean, we signed an artist this year, and she from Toronto, and she had been trying to do stuff and work with us for like a couple years, and she just wasn't quite there yet, but was consistent and persistent, and we gave her sort of tips on here's what you probably should do, here's what we think the writing should be, you should maybe work with these people. We did some introductions, and then this year she ended up signing with us because she sort of did the things that we suggested that she do, and it worked out.
And you, Jace?
And I was going to tie that in together as well, and actually do the work, like have music available. I've met with people that they talk about what they want to do, but they have yet to even record a song. And so it's hard for me to give you feedback based on what you think you want to do versus if you actually had a song that I could listen to and say, no, you should change this, or no, this isn't working. Like actually have some music and actually work on your music, because people will record a song and then walk away and they don't put time and effort into it. So if I see that you put time and effort into the music and what you're doing, I'm more inclined to then put more energy into it as well and help you get to the next level.
Very important. I just want to piggyback on that. I get emails about, I'm thinking about doing music. I'm thinking about going into music.
Yeah.
I can't take the time to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Do music.
Do
start.
Yes.
Start.
do
Even if it's
something.
crappy, start before I can interface with you,
Yeah.
because
Exactly.
it's unfair to ask someone to invest time on an idea or a whim you may be having. So,
And if I go right to the other extreme, I've had meetings where people have come with laptops with hundreds of tracks
Jesus
on there,
Christ.
but also don't want to play me anything because they're a bit digi that is going to be plagiarized, and then don't want to send me anything or leave me with anything.
Yeah.
So there's the other, all those songs that stay on the bedroom floors. There's the other extreme. You have to give birth to these things, and
Get 'em out there.
you have to let them go out there.
Yeah.
Can somebody? Somebody might copy it, but not for me.
going back to
Yeah, you've got the copyright. It's a bit of a
Right.
fight, but it's always good to get it out there. So
I mean, and we work with artists on the pub side that we don't sign. So like I've set up co-writing sessions with artists that we actually have signed to our roster with writers that aren't signed to our roster. Because they're really great writers, and then we end up signing if the song's really good and it makes the record, we'll sign like a one-song co-pub deal with that, and then we'll sort of start the relationship that way as well. So there's all kinds of different ways for us that we can work with artists, right? So.
Question just here. I think I've got time for probably a couple of questions. 3, maybe.
Just quickly, can you speak to copyright on Facebook?
I leave that legal.
Well, Facebook is a digital platform that I know most PROs collect from, but I guess the intricacies of it, I don't have
I was going to say,
a deep
that's kind of a
understanding
broad
of.
question. Like, what
But
do
it's
you
a
guys
platform we do collect licensing fees from.
I just heard that if you put something directly onto Facebook, then Facebook owns it, but I don't actually know.
No, I don't
No, I
believe
don't
that's
think
the case.
Now that doesn't supersede the
No.
copyright law of the
No.
land.
No, it
Yeah,
doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, because we have issues all the time where people put somebody else's song up and
Take
the
down.
label is like, no, you have to
Like
take
their
that down.
cat
You have
video.
permission for that. So
It's in the background.
Yeah, you take it's, and then when you go to click it, it says this is a part of a copyright infringement. So you can't play it.
Got another question just here and another couple at the back.
For the artist in the emerging stage who's looking for you to see the potential and give that feedback on the song, what Melissa, you talked about a wrong way to send that email. What are triggers?
Okay. Well, like attaching an MP3 to your email is kind of annoying, just because it crowds up your inbox. So I always suggest to people, whenever you're reaching out to anybody in the industry, like music supervisors and all that as well, do a bit of research and see like what it is they actually do in the industry. It's like sending out a resume. Don't like send just a big blast to everybody. The same thing. Like let it be known that you've kind of like. Let's just say music supervisors, for instance, like what shows they're working on right now, and maybe you've listened to the songs that are on the shows, and you're like, hey, I've got some stuff that I think would be really great for the next season or whatever. Introduce yourself and ask how they want to receive music. Like, maybe some people want to have a one sheet. Generally, a streaming link is best. So you can just go to it, private streaming link or whatever. But just ask. That's kind of the best way I like to receive stuff.
Yes.
And I know for me, if I see you somewhere, I feel like that's a big deal. Like if you're an emerging artist and you want to do something, I should see you at South by. Like, if you've never gotten outside of your city, then I don't know if I'm going to take you serious as you want to be an artist, because you haven't invested in yourself to actually do something. Like, if I see you at South by, if I see you in LA, if I see you in New York, if I see you here, then I might take you serious, right? If I see you at different festivals and conferences just trying to meet people, then I take you serious because you're actually investing in yourself. But if you're just sitting at home, just sending out a bunch of emails, then I don't really.
And I'd like to say, I don't mean by being annoying. I don't mean like, oh, that person's annoying, I'm not going to talk to them. Not like that. I just mean like, just to add on to all the stuff that you were saying about, they're talking about what they want to do, but they're not actually doing it. That kind of thing. It's just like, show some that you put some work into
some initiative.
Yeah.
So I think there was another question at the back.
I heard a rumor that Rihanna was going to be here.
She's right there.
I don't have a super deep understanding of the intricacies of the policy, but I do know that it's a good thing for our BMI and ASCAP were both huge advocates for it. It's going to bring more money to our writers. They're going to be able to collect or be paid from sources that I think it's largely like the live space.
The live space, and also too, like we were talking about, where you might have an issue where people, at a time, registration wasn't a big deal back in the day. Now there isn't like some hard cap on, oh, if I didn't collect 10 years ago, then I'm losing my money. Now it's almost like, no, we're going to take the time to do the due diligence to actually get you paid, whether it was 2 days ago or 10 years ago. And so I think that makes a difference too for certain people that they're just creative and they don't have the right business people around them, so they just lose a lot of money. We're trying to help the writer who doesn't have a business mind still get paid on their actual creativity and their art.
And I know a big part of it is because the live music industry is growing, has grown and continues to grow in the States. It's taking a piece of the money that's being generated by the likes of the Live Nations and those types of people and paying it back to the writers. So I mean, it's a net positive from my understanding. I know there were one of our, I guess, competitors, CSAC, was not for it. They were against it because the government is creating. I guess they're creating an organization that is to collect and pay out these funds, and it was a direct competitor to CSAC, which is a for-profit PRO. Is a direct competitor to
what they're doing.
I guess a sector of their business, so they were against it, and they weren't solely against it, but they wanted to be that organization that collected. So
Oh, well, we ended on a really deep note, guys.
We didn't get the guy.
I know. Oh, sorry.
The tall guy with the black hat on.
Okay.
Oh, you good? Okay.
He's just telling us
you're cutting up.
Oh, he kept raising his hand.
Okay, well, thank you very much, guys. A round of applause to our wonderful guests.
He's like, go
Thank you.
wrap it up.